beautiful people. Political engagement looks good on you. Thanks for showing up. I will be your host for today because my gracious co-host, Marcos Malitzis, founder of Daily Kos, is on vacation, I think. Hopefully resting and relaxing. Who knows? He might be doing something. Hopefully he's doing something restorative. So anyway, but I have here with me our favorite pollster, director of civics polling, Drew Linzer. And we have polling that has just come back. Civics just conducted polling over the weekend. So we're out with a new poll, and we are giving you some of the top lines today. It will be by the time you get this, it will be, that poll will be live. So we're recording on Tuesday, but it will be live on Wednesday morning. And all of the things we talk about here, you can rush straight to civics and, click on it and get those reports. Civics has reports that it does after every poll that they conduct. And on top of that, I'll be writing some of it up. So if you read us on dailykos.com, you will get some of my write-ups, which will obviously be super insightful. Right, Drew?
Always. They're the best. Thank you so much.
Welcome, Drew. Thank you for joiing us. So I'm super excited about this. I want to say one quick thing, because there was like this, Beltway media polling freak out over a CNN poll last week where Biden's approval rating was, job approval rating was like way underwater at like 22 points or something like that. Okay. I just want to be clear about something. How pollsters ask these questions is different, and you can end up with different results. I highly encourage everybody, if they are interested in Joe Biden's approval rating, to go to Civics tracking of Joe Biden's approval rating, because you will see it's not all herky jerky. It doesn't go all up and down and all over the place. It's pretty steady. And right now it's pretty steady at 39% approval, 53% disapproval, with, 7 or 8% of people like undecided. Okay. So, and that is, the CNN poll in terms of Biden being 22 points underwater was an outlier. But what most every poll agrees on right now is that President Biden's approval rating is right around 39, 40%, maybe 41%. Some people have them a little higher, a little lower. That is exactly in civics tracking where his approval level was when the midterms on election day last year, when Democrats wildly outperformed expectations. So, it's not to say that a midterm and a presidential election are, totally analogous or whatever, but it's just a cautionary tale of like, it's really early. Don't get all hyped up about, regardless of what the pundits are saying, don't get all hyped up about a poll. Drew, you're like, you do this for a living. I'm just like I'm just like the hot takes gal. You want to add anything to to what I said here?
Yeah, it's Joe Biden's job approval rating has been very steady for months and months now, and it's around 39%. It's it's not moving. There were points at which earlier in his presidency when we saw movement, but these days it's been a lot more like former President Trump's job approval rating, which was just flat. Just there were people who seemed to like him and people who seemed to not like him, and nothing that was happening in the world really seemed to make a difference. So, don't worry about outliers. You can come to the Civics website and see we track this every single day.
Every single day.
Come back every day. You'll see it's been about the same as it was the day before.
Someone you guys may know, you listeners may know, looks at these tracking polls almost every day to see if there's any movement. And I can tell you, there's not a whole lot of excitement around Joe Biden's approval number. It doesn't move that much. It's kind of just like there.
Other things move, but
other things move.
It's pretty locked in.
Trump's sometimes moves a little bit. Some of the and at civics.com, that's civics with a Q. It's CIVIQS.com. They have all of the tracking for every GOP 2024 hopeful that's live.
That's right.
You can check that out. And that is kind of interesting because there is some movement based on, voters finally getting some, some interaction with these candidates, or seeing the Republican debate or whatever. So there is a little bit of movement there, which is kind of interesting. And it's a different way of sort of judging what's happening than like looking at the horse race polls.
Yeah, that's fascinating because you can see for Nikki Haley, for example, or Ron DeSantis over time as they've taken a more vocal role in the campaign their favorable ratings have fallen because Republican voters still really like Donald Trump. And when these candidates go out and start criticizing Donald Trump, as I think they have to, if they're serious about trying to win this primary, voters punish them for it. So those are some trend lines. You can time it. It's just a steady decline. But we've got them all running. So that's been fascinating to watch over time.
Yeah. Okay. So let's move on. We've got this new poll out, and it will be live Wednesday morning. I encourage everybody to take a look at it. Fascinating stuff. First of all, Civics asked a number of questions about the age of politicians, court justices, et cetera. And I definitely want to get to the comparison of how voters feel about Joe Biden's age versus and Joe Biden. God, I should have looked this up. Is he 80 or 81? I think he's 80. Donald Trump is only a few years younger, so they're essentially peers, and we want to get into the contrast there. But before we do that, what was your takeaway, Drew, from looking at voters responsive? Our producer, Walter Einenkel, says he's 80 and he will be 81 on November 20th. So just to let you guys know, right around Thanksgiving, he's just he's a spring chicken, 80 years old. Okay. So, Drew, what are voters, what's the general sort of tenor of how they're thinking about age, forced retirements, things like that?
Yeah. Well, let's start a little bit broad, and then we can zoom in more specifically on Biden and Trump, if that works for you.
Sure.
Okay, so we did a national survey, like Kerry was saying, over the weekend, where we interviewed just over 11,000 registered voters. And some of the questions we asked them in this poll had to do with whether voters thought there should be a mandatory retirement age for U.S. senators, 2 Supreme Court justices, and then U.S. presidents. And what we found was that voters really do support retirement ages for people in these important federal offices. The most support came for having a mandatory retirement age for U.S. senators, where 74% of people said that they would support basically forcing senators to retire after a certain age. And you don't get to 74% in a poll unless Democrats and Republicans and independents agree. And in fact, it's about 3/4 of Democrats, Republicans, and independents who all agree that past a certain age, we didn't say what age, we just said is there some age where U.S. senators should be forced to retire? 74% said yes.
Well, and I think it's worth mentioning that number comes in a situation where people have witnessed, Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell suffer a concussion.
Right.
He's, I think, 80 something. He's right around Biden's age, and then have these moments where he freezes up during, for like 30 seconds at a time during a press conference. That's happened twice. Also, Senator Dianne Feinstein, Democrat from California. She's doesn't seem to be well, or by reports, particularly all there, but she's still a sitting senator. So, I mean, this question comes amid a time when we have a very, in some ways, aged, I don't know, sphere of politicians running the country, that maybe people feel like they're not, they're either out of step, or maybe they're, they don't think that they're representing people in a, reasonable way. So
I know it. That's exactly right. And those two, I think, are the most prominent current examples, but but they are by no means the only examples. And voters know who's representing them in these federal offices. These entire legislative bodies have been getting older. So that's one area where the most people are in agreement. But there is also 2/3 agreement that there should be a mandatory retirement age for Supreme Court justices. So it's just a small tick down. 67% of voters think that Supreme Court justices should be forced to retire after a certain age. That's one where Democrats favor this more than Republicans, but a majority of Republicans still support that. And then one tick lower in support, but still clear majority of support for a mandatory retirement age for U.S. presidents. 58% of voters say there is some age where once you're past that, you can't run for president anymore. So I think that the takeaway here is that this is not some short-lived media tempest. This is actually something that a lot of people think would be good for our political system, to let some of our older representatives retire. You've done a good job. Congratulations. We thank you for your service.
Here's your toaster oven, your watch, whatever it is.
With your family. And
your
Fitbit. Let's let some younger folks step into these roles.
Yeah. I'll make a plug for Nancy Pelosi there. Nancy Pelosi is 83. I will. I'm a Pelosi fan. And, I try not to give compliments unless I meet them. I'm not just like constantly pumping out Democrats are great stuff, unless it's like feels warranted. Nancy Pelosi stepped aside, and she didn't have to. And she let a much younger generation take over the leadership. She also seemed to convince Steny Hoyer and the majority whip at the time, James Clyburn, to step aside and let a much younger generation of Democrats take over leadership there. And it was just absolutely the right move. She's serving out her term. She's there to mentor them, which frankly, she's the best speaker, the most effective speaker, not just Democrats, that probably has been around in half a century in terms of running the House. So, I just think that was a class act. It was the right thing to do. And she's there to help out, do some hand holding if necessary. Republicans are kind of driving themselves into the ground without a whole lot of help. So if you're Hakeem Jeffries, who's now the minority leader in the House, you can just be like, yeah, I mean, those Republicans are a little dicey. But anyway, so that was just a plug for people who step away at the height of their game and let younger folks take over. All right. Time for me to transition to something new. Sometimes I forget that I'm like, usually as Marco's co-host, he's the one who moves things along. We're going to move now. Oh yeah. Let's talk about this difference between voters' perceptions of Joe Biden's age and Donald Trump's age, which is a fascinating topic. Okay, so Drew, hit the top lines for us here.
Well, let's start with Trump. I'm going to flip it up. Everyone has been talking about Joe Biden, but let's actually start with Trump. And this survey asked respondents, are you concerned about Donald Trump's age affecting his ability to serve as president? So it's a very broadly worded question. People can interpret that however they want, but just, are you concerned? And we gave folks the option of saying, yes, I'm very concerned. Yes, I'm somewhat concerned, or no, I'm not concerned. So on this question, 49% of voters said they were either somewhat or very concerned, and 48% said they're not concerned. So, as we'll talk about in a moment here, voters are very concerned about Joe Biden, but a plurality, almost a majority, are concerned about Donald Trump's age. Now, the thing about the way people answered this question is that it polarized very neatly on partisan lines. So overwhelmingly, Republican voters said they're not concerned. Democratic voters said they are concerned. And so when that happens, you get this kind of 50-50 even split. Now let's contrast that with Joe Biden.
So it's fascinating. I just want to drive that point home. I mean, 71% of Republicans said they weren't concerned about Donald Trump's, right? So that's really the majority of partisans just lining up behind their guy and saying, no, I'm not concerned about that.
That's right. Right. Now, when we ask the same question about Joe Biden, so I'll just read it to you again here. Are you concerned about Joe Biden's age affecting his ability to serve as president? Top line result is a lot more people said that they were concerned about Joe Biden's age. The underlying reason is that there wasn't that strong partisan, almost cheerleading that we saw in the question about Donald Trump. So at a top line level, remember, 49% said they were concerned about Donald Trump's age, but for Joe Biden, it's 75%. So this again is real. This is not some story of the week. 75% of voters here are saying that they are either very concerned or somewhat concerned about Joe Biden's age. The reason for that is all the Republicans say they're concerned because they're Republicans. That's what we would expect. But many Democrats say they're concerned, and specifically many young Democrats say they're concerned. So among Democrats, 50% of Democrats say they're very concerned. Among people who voted for Joe Biden in 2020, 54% of people are concerned. Among Democrats aged 18 to 34, and this is really where the numbers shift and why Biden's numbers look like this, 70% of Democrats aged 18 to 34 say they're either very concerned or somewhat concerned about Joe Biden's age. And we've seen the same pattern in public opinion among young Democrats in Joe Biden's approval rating and in other aspects of perceptions of his presidential leadership, that young Democrats who you would think would be a very strong supporter of a Democratic president are not on board with Joe Biden. They say that they don't approve of the job he's doing, and they're concerned about his age. And this all goes hand in hand.
Right. So, Drew's making a point about, both partisanship and age, right? That it's young Democrats, but just as a baseline, just as a really an easier baseline especially for people listening to this. It's always harder, talking about numbers for people listening.
A lot of numbers, I know.
There's a lot of numbers, but I just want to go back when we asked about Trump, 71% of Republicans, just Republicans, said, no, we're not concerned.
Right, that's right.
But among Democrats, 49% said, no, we're not concerned.
That's right.
So it's Democrats who are coming forward and saying, they didn't line up lockstep behind their guy with that question. That said, it doesn't mean that given a choice between Donald Trump, I mean, if this is what it turns out to be, between Donald Trump and Joe Biden, it doesn't mean that those people aren't going to vote for Joe Biden. I think, the question is whether or not there's a third party candidate, like a Cornel West or something, who provides an outlet for someone. But that's a different question. Just in a pure head to head, let's just keep it what we know. If it was a pure head to head, those people those Democrats who are expressing concern are most likely still going to go ahead and vote for Joe Biden again.
Yeah, that's exactly the issue, is that the folks who, on the Republican side, these voters are committed to expressing good things about Donald Trump period. No matter what we ask about. We'll get
It's
to this in a
almost
minute.
like a cult. It's almost like a cult, Drew.
I just read the numbers, Kerry. I just tell you what the numbers are. But on the Democratic side, there is more willingness to be critical in voters' evaluations of Joe Biden and of Democrats in general. So when that happens, then it just becomes an arithmetic problem. You add up Republicans who are in lockstep and Democrats who aren't, and it's going to look a little bit worse for Joe Biden. But that doesn't mean they're not going to vote for Joe Biden. It just means they're willing to be critical of Joe Biden on certain questions in this moment.
Right. Okay, great. So let's what's another topic? I know that we wanted to get to some polling around Trump's guilt or not guilt.
Yes.
And you just read the numbers though, right, Drew? You're just a number reader.
I just tell you what the survey says.
Did you just tell you what the survey? But we're teasing people. That could be the last topic we get to. Can you want to do? You want to sandwich something else in there? We'll just tease people with this final topic.
Yeah, well, let's talk a little bit about this question that you've been very interested in for a number of months now, which is which is the question of, hypothetically, if Donald Trump is the Republican nominee for president, which, I mean, that's probably the most likely scenario. But if Donald Trump is the Republican nominee for president, would you definitely vote for him? Probably vote for him. Probably vote for someone else. Definitely vote for someone else. And so we've been asking this every 4 or 6 weeks or so. And the results from this most recent survey came back with 55% of people saying that they would vote for someone else. 52% of voters would definitely vote for someone else. So you've got the likely Republican nominee here. A campaign has barely even started, and 52% of voters are definitely not going to vote for him.
I mean, it's tough to reach out at that point.
Yeah.
It's you know what? I am not a mathematician, but if you get 52%, if 52% are definitely not going to vote for you, it seems hard to get to 50 plus 1. I mean,
yeah,
that
52 is more than 50. That's a pro tip from a pollster.
All that calculus is finally paying off for me. Oof, man.
Well, I have to be fair. I have to tell you that we asked this question for Joe Biden as well. And
I know. I want to request that the next time you do this, you just don't ask the question for Joe Biden. No, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. No, I think you have to ask it for both. Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah. So people don't really, I mean, the numbers aren't as bad for Biden as they are for Trump. But Biden is also not doing very well by this measure. 49% say that if Joe Biden is the Democratic nominee for president, then they would definitely vote for someone else as well. So what we're looking at here is a rematch between two candidates with very strong, should we call them electoral flaws? Voters are not
some downsides.
Really
They've just got to sand off the rough edges here, I think is what we're talking about. I just want to make the point though. If 49% of people say that they would definitely not vote for you, you can get to 50 plus 1 with that. You can.
That's true.
So anyway, sorry. Go ahead.
No, it's just we continue to be facing a scenario here in the 2024 election where voters are not happy with either of their probable choices. I'll let you know. We're going to keep an eye on this, obviously. This is an important question. Happy to let you know if that changes. But now for 4 months running, it's been pretty consistent that voters would like to vote for someone who is not Joe Biden or Donald Trump.
Yeah. I will say it's worth noting. So we asked this question. We've asked this question now 3 months in a row, June, July, and August. And in June, Trump was actually faring better than Biden was.
That's true.
So in June, it said, I would definitely vote for him on that metric. 39 people said that they would definitely vote for Trump, and 34% said they would definitely vote for Biden. So at that point, Trump was actually running 5 points ahead of Biden on that question in June. And so that the dynamic has shifted a touch in Biden's favor over the last several months.
Right. So this question is designed to try to elicit from voters the strength of their commitment to their candidates. Are you certain, or is there any room that you could shift, that you would reconsider? And we are seeing some softening in support for Trump. Not saying that they're not going to vote for him, but just the support is softening. And this is the sort of thing where nobody should expect these numbers to flip quickly. People have, especially on the Republican side, now have many, many years of attachment and identity built up with their support for Donald Trump.
It's
And it's
almost
not
like a
going to change.
cult.
There's that word again. It's not realistic to expect it to change rapidly, but it's possible that it could change gradually. And so we'll keep monitoring this, and it's possible that support could eventually soften. It could lead people to not be enthusiastic to turn out and vote. Or I suppose we'll measure it. If it happens, maybe they change their mind and they don't want to vote for him at all anymore. But it's going to be gradual.
Yeah.
And that's why we wanted to start now, which is a very early point, so that we could get a baseline down and watch how it changes, and not come in 6 months from now and be like, how did we get here? Now we'll know how we got there.
Exactly. So it's always good to have a starting point. We're consistently looking at that. And that's why these tracking numbers that Civics does are so important, because you can really see, are things really changing, or is this about where they've been?
Right.
And, one of the things that I love about Civics numbers is that they don't tend to vote, sort of bounce all over the place. So that like, when there is a change in Civics, in the Civics tracking in particular, I'm like, oh, that's meaningful, because they're not just like, up and down all over the place. So anyway, yeah. And anyone who I'm razzing Drew here a little bit about the cult and him just being the guy who reads the numbers. Anybody who has listened to me interview Drew before knows that part of the vibe of this interview is that I get to harass Drew just a little bit, even while enjoying all of the information that he's relaying. So anyway, okay, let's go on and look at what you guys asked about Trump's and Trump, and specifically Georgia, right? You're specifically talking about
Fulton County, Georgia.
The Fulton County, Georgia indictment. And for our listeners, it is daunting to keep track of all of the legal proceedings against Donald Trump at this point. But this is the sort of sweeping conspiracy case against Donald Trump for allegedly trying to overturn Georgia's elections. So it's the Fulton County DA. This is not the federal case. This is the big one that was just announced just as we were going into this, taking the temperature of voters on this. So go take it away.
Mugshot one.
Mugshot, right?
This is the mugshot one.
All right. What do we got? Tell us about it.
2 questions on this. One is, do you think he's guilty? The other is, do you think he should go to jail? I'm going to give you the results backwards because it's too good. I mean, these are big numbers, in my opinion. All right. Do you think that Donald Trump should go to jail based on the charges in the Fulton County, Georgia District Attorney's indictment? Yes, he should. 49%. No, he should not. 46%. 5% unsure. Okay. 49%, nearly a majority of voters in this country, believe that based on these charges in Fulton County, Georgia, that Donald Trump should go to jail. That's an enormous number. This is not some fringe political campaign. Almost half of voters think that based on the charges in Georgia that Donald Trump should go to jail. It's obviously very polarized by party, but Democrats say they want this, and many, many independents say that they think he should go to jail.
And some small slice of Republicans too. What is that number?
Right. Let me see here. I've got it in front of me. Should you go to jail? Republicans, 6% of Republicans.
Okay.
say that he should go to jail. And
Right.
in effect, there are 2% of people who voted for Donald Trump, 2%, not zero, but 2% of voters say that they voted for Donald Trump in 2020, but he should go to jail now.
Right.
So there you go.
So let's be clear about something. 2% in these polarized times, if it's really a Trump-Biden rematch, it could be a meaningful number of people. In other words, like you can win or lose an election based on 2%, depending on where they're distributed and things like that.
Well, 5% of Trump voters are unsure. So there's who knows.
Yeah, and 6% of Republicans said he should go to jail. I mean,
Yeah.
those are. I mean, look, the conversation. And I don't think I can say this enough because for so long the conversation was all about turnout. Okay, now you have to do both things. It's not just who turns their voters out. It's also how many swing voters or independent voters do you get? Can you bring along a
That's
super small slice of the other? The other parties' voters or people who are independents who might vote one way, or vote for one candidate, but vote for a different candidate on the top of the ticket, that type of thing. It is now not just turnout. Turnout is super important. Can't get anywhere without high turnout for your own voters. But at the same time, we won an election in 2020 and also managed to escape a total drubbing, what should have likely been, just based on historical norms, a total drubbing in 2022 by doing better among independents and swing voters and a small slice of Republicans than most pundits thought we could or suggested we could, especially in 2022. I think so. They are the difference makers in these very tight elections, and we've got to have them to win, for Democrats to win.
Well, here's an interesting quirk in the crosstabs on this question, and then we can move on to the other question. But
sure,
generally, when we do polling, we see a gender gap emerge on partisan issues where women are more on the Democratic side, marginally, and men are more on the Republican side. And actually, that flipped on this question, where men are more supportive of putting Donald Trump in jail than women are. So make of that what you will.
Wow, that is kind of fascinating, I must say. Okay, so that question was all about, do you think that Trump should go to jail based on the charges filed in the Fulton County, Georgia indictment? And 49% said yes, he should go to jail. 46% said no, he shouldn't. 5% were unsure. Now we go to the next question, which actually, as it was done in the poll, in the survey, was the first question, which is, do you think Trump is guilty of the charges? So what did we get there?
This first.
Yep.
Right. We asked this first because obviously you don't want to get people thinking about jail and then ask if they think he's guilty. So we asked, do you think that he's guilty of the charges in the indictment of conspiring to overturn the result of the 2020 presidential election in Georgia? And a lot of people think he's guilty. 54%
of all charges. Yeah, sorry, go ahead.
Oh, yeah, well, 54%. So more than that, 49% thinks he should be in jail, but 54% say that he's guilty of at least something, either all the charges or some charges. But 48% say that they think that Donald Trump is guilty of all the charges.
That's amazing.
So there's a little fall off between people who they may think he's guilty, but they don't think he should go to jail. But there's still 54% say that they think Donald Trump is guilty of something. And most, by far, most of those people say that he's guilty of everything. And again, we were looking at it by party. So 5% of Republicans think Donald Trump was guilty of all the charges. Another 8% think he's guilty of some charges. 7% say they're unsure. But among Republicans who are willing to say yes, that's 13%. So that's not nothing. More than 1 in 10, depending if you want to include unsures, that's like almost 20% Republicans say that they're either yes, Trump is guilty, or they don't know. And then even Trump voters, 8% of Trump voters themselves think that he's at least guilty of something. So this speaks to that softening that we were talking about.
8%
maybe
of
it's just starting, but
yeah, right.
there's something there. It's sinking in for voters, and particularly Republican voters, that maybe there is something to this talk that Trump is guilty of something, that he did something wrong.
8% of Trump voters is interesting in the sense that it's not just 8% of Republicans, right?
Right.
There are people there are people who identify as Republicans who, may have voted and did. There were people who definitely vote, who identify as Republicans who voted for Joe Biden in 2020. These aren't just Republican identified respondents. These are Trump identified respondents who are saying
independents,
who are saying, I think he's guilty of all charges. Was that what?
Well, the 8% is anything, at least some.
Okay, at least something. He's guilty of something. That dude did something wrong. So I mean, that is, it is 8% of your own voters is a lot. I mean, in terms of electoral outcomes, that's a lot. Now, not all 8% of those people, are of those voters is necessarily going to not vote for Trump still.
No,
I mean, there's still the well, he's better than Joe Biden. So, I mean, the rationale of Nikki Haley. Well, I would vote for him anyway because because we can't have a President Kamala Harris, I mean, there's these idiots, some of whom are trying to, I shouldn't call them idiots, but anyway, these GOP hopefuls, some of whom are trying to beat Trump, some of whom may just be running to be his vice presidential pick, but they're making his own case for him sometimes. Well, we should vote for him we should support him anyways, because it would be so much worse to have Joe Biden or Kamala Harris in charge of the country. And that's exactly what he wants them to say. But so I'm just going to throw something out there that is a sheer guess, a sheer intuition that I can't necessarily provide the numbers for, but we have seen a little bit of softening in terms of, there are numbers that indicate a little bit of softening in terms of, diehard Trump support. Not much. Okay. Not much. I want to be really clear, but there is a piece of me that wonders that if this thing is going to fall apart for Trump, and I say this thing as in getting the nomination, if this thing is going to fall apart for Trump, it could be sudden. Okay. Now, I'm not saying that's going to happen, but you could see a scenario where it's a little bit like a house of cards and it's all there. And all of a sudden you start to pull out, one card and it all just sort of starts to come down. You know what I mean? Like suddenly everybody's like, oh my God, we can't have someone who's in jail, right as our nominee. I mean, don't get me wrong. There are plenty of Trump cultists who would be fine with that. But I'm just saying, like, it's possible that suddenly you could have a bunch of people, because there was legitimate interest before Florida Governor Ron DeSantis proved to be such a terrible candidate that was really abysmal at almost everything related to being a candidate. Where people were there were legitimate Republican voters saying, I don't know about Trump. I want someone Trumpy, but I'm worried that Trump can't win it again. And you could see a scenario where it's possible, where all of a sudden people could be like, oh my God, he really is going to be convicted, or he really, this really is a problem. And I want someone to win. I want someone to win. So I don't know. I don't know. I'm just throwing that out. Like, it could look like Trump's inevitable until he's not. Just like it looked like there was no way Joe Biden could win the nomination until he won South Carolina, and then he was the clear front runner and, prospective nominee, and everybody dropped out and endorsed Joe Biden because he was going to win it. So you never know how these things turn around. It's still his nomination to lose at this point. That's undoubtedly true. Drew, sorry. Joe, sorry. No, I got confused. Drew,
Yes.
Favorite pollster, anything else you want to add before we sign off for today?
Anything else I want to add? Well, I will just reiterate what you mentioned at the top, which is that this is a brand new survey. It just came out of the field, and we will be releasing it publicly tomorrow, but happy to talk with you about it today. So if you head over to the Civics website and there's not enough for you on the homepage, you can click on reports, and you'll see all the crosstabs with all the details of all the numbers that we've been discussing today, and a little memo. And I invite you to check it out.
Yeah. So go look up this, go to civics.com, civics with a Q. Check out the reports. Are the reports right on the homepage right there?
Yeah, there's a link at the top that says news and reports. So
okay. News and reports. So you click on that tab and you get all the reports. They do a little report on every daily, co-branded Daily Kos Civics monthly survey that they do. And one of the things I also really like about these co-branded polls that Civics conducts for us is that it's really easy to find the crosstabs. You don't have to dig around, right? There's the top lines, like we asked 20 questions. Here's the top line results of all 20 questions. And then you go down further and here's the first question. And here are all the, here's all the crosstabs broken out by gender and race and age and partisanship and all that stuff, right? So it's really easy to look at the crosstabs here and make sense of them. Sometimes, I try to look at polls and find their crosstabs, and it's really impossible to find. They're all right there. So anyway, come to dailykos.com. I'm going to be recapping some of what we talked about here today. And if you want to make a comment about it in our comments, interact with other Daily Kos readers, do it. Go to civics.com and get their takeaway on what they thought was most interesting about this poll. And, also as a podcast, please go. If you like what we do every week, go ahead and give us a thumbs up on it at your favorite, whatever your favorite platform is, whether it's Apple Podcasts or Spotify or whatever. I want to thank Drew Linzer for being with us today. I want to thank our producer, Walter Einenkel, for the support he always provides. I hope that Marcos Malitzis, I think he's going to be back with us next week. We'll be back and rested and ready to go. And I want to thank all of you for showing up because engagement is really the name of the game here. We all engage in the ways we can. We do our best. And, everybody, what I do know is that time is a premium. It's a precious commodity to each one of us. So if you're taking time to listen to us, that's really important to me. It's really important to Marcos. We appreciate that. And we hope you walk away from everyone enthused, engaged, better informed, and, ready to go out and make a difference. Hopefully happy. Hopefully you've had a few laughs. Hopefully, not just I just want you to know Drew's laughing with us, right? We're not just laughing at Drew, the numbers guy. I just read the numbers. He's got a big smile on his face. Anyway, thank you so much, Drew Linzer, Director of Polling for Civics. And thank you all. We will see you next week.